Technorama. Here is the Technorama. Ah, Hannah, how are you? Morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. That's me.
Class ready to go.
Manish Raj, yeah.
Have
Thanks
a
very much.
fantastic time.
Good to see you again.
See you later.
That's the Technorama conference. All ready to go.
Yeah, I love my 12.
Delegates are ready.
That one.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Okay,
We're just talking
everybody.
Oh,
about you.
good.
In your seats.
Hello. Chris is here too. Yeah, there you
your
go.
seats, ladies and
Let's
gentlemen.
take the seats.
Am I suitably audible? Yes. Good. Hello and welcome to Technorama 22, and thank you very much for having the courage to come out in the post-COVID era where you run gigs and you have no idea how anything is going to work. We think today is going to be an absolutely wonderful program. The most important thing about today is that we should all be together again in the one place and meeting. And that is your biggest aim. If you take nothing away from any of the topics that we're discussing, you should at least be meeting people who are new and forging alliances and working out how to solve problems, and in particular, meet the people who have come today to help you. So, I'm John Maizels. I am the president of Technorama, and I thought I'd start with something that might be a little bit of a challenge, and this is not the knowledge map, this is the ignorance map. This is the stuff that you don't know, because a lot of what we're going to be doing today is going to be pitched at a level way below the I know everything level. Okay, who in this room knows everything about broadcasting? Hannah put her hand up and she's standing behind all of you, so you can't see her. Nobody does. And at once upon a time, when I was a boy, I got fired from my first job as a commercial radio announcer for pissing off the chief engineer. Look how that turned out. But that was a time when the chief engineer had built everything in the station by hand. It was all valves, he had done everything, and he was old school even then, which was the early 70s. There was a country radio station, city stations had actually moved on to transistor things, but there were we still with the glowing bottles. And at that point, you could sort of know a lot, and the education system taught everybody in broadcasting a lot, and you came out with a piece of paper that said, I know enough not to blow myself up with the transmitter. And typically it is station management has a really crap understanding of the technology that they're putting into play. Broadcasting is a technology business. Now, we all say content is king, but broadcasting is a technology business. If you don't have technology, you are at best a megaphone and you're talking to somebody else in the same room. You're not talking to your listeners who are on the other side of a transmitter, or on the other side of streaming, or on the other side of whatever it is, podcast, distribution on USB keys, anything. It's all technology. And if you don't understand at least enough about the technology or know what you don't know, then how can you possibly be making good decisions? One of the 4 drivers is the desperate need for techs to manage risk. We all do that. We come in and we go, okay, what is going to work the best way? Now, sometimes, and this is one of the danger points within the industry, that we will do stuff in the heat of the moment because one of our biggest drivers is we never go to black, we never go dead, no dead air. That is really critical to us. But ahead of that, we should be trying to organise things so that nothing breaks, so that the transmitter doesn't go offline because we've got backup, so that the IT systems are okay, so blah, blah, blah. What technologists do, and it seems to be in DNA, is manage risk. That requires us, of course, to have some understanding of what is good about the business, what is important to the business, and then we make appropriate choices of what we recommend or install or anything else. And we try to avoid making mistakes through problems with people dropping out And we all know the story that the kids of today aren't interested in linear radio, they want to go to Spotify, blah, 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 blah. Well, that of course makes it very difficult to get people involved in what we do. And so we have, quite frankly, a shortage of young people and we have a shortage of women, but that's the industry. So we have mugs. So there are Technorama mugs. This one has Maze written underneath it. I will know if you steal it. This is my mug. We also have the Technorama screwdriver sets. Has tips. Has 7 very useful tips in it. It's just the sort of thing that you can wear onto a plane and have stolen, because you've got to make them happy. A presenter who isn't happy because something isn't working in the studio, particularly if it's never been working in the studio and it hasn't been working for the 8 years that they've been a volunteer, that's an impediment to them being as creative as they could possibly be, and that then spills over into not delivering the best potential outcome for your listeners. So, we should be thinking about what can we do that represents better tools. We're going through a number of presentations, so leading up to the first break, we're going to hear the view from the industry. And our industry leaders, so we have CBAA, CBF, and CMTO, really important organisations to all of us. And I've asked them to come along and talk about what it is their organisation is doing currently and the view they have of tech and the tips they would give for tech. And I think you're going to hear some stuff from the CBAA. I haven't looked at John's presentation yet, but I'm hoping he's going to talk about the website and streaming.
Hello everyone. For those that I haven't met, and I think I've met most of you over, it's nearly 10 years, it'll be 10 years in February since I've been at CBAA, but I've met most of you and visited a lot of your stations over the last few years, well not the last couple of years, but before that. I've got a few things to talk about today. John's asked me to give an update on a number of things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about CBAA. I want to talk a little bit about what the shape of what the sector actually looks like. List the numbers, audience, those sorts of things. Talk a little bit about the importance of community radio generally and some of the amazing things that have happened, particularly amazing work that community radio has done over the last few years during COVID, bushfires, etc. CBAA is closing in on 50 years old. I think we started in 1974, formed by a number of stations that needed to have a collective voice. John, I don't know if you were around right at the beginning, but...
I was around before that. Okay,
John was around before that. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. It's a bit like John's question mark slide with lots of writing. This is our strategy. We're here to help stations become stronger and more successful, and we do that in 6 key ways. Leading for purpose. We're trying to show people what is good practice, how we should be moving forward, and I think the challenge for the sector over the next few years is going to really be about maintaining its relevance. We're here to help connect audiences, so help make community radio stations available where audiences expect to listen to them. We can't be stuck just on FM, we need to be wherever our audiences want to hear us, and that's ever evolving. I think over the last, as I've been talking to stations over many years, is people often sit in their own little bubble of the type of station that they have. And I think it's really important that everyone understands the breadth of the sector. There's about 450 community radio services stations out there and delivering about 500 services right across the country. And that includes on AM, FM, DAB+, and of course streaming online. And a little over 5 million listeners. Now a large proportion of those listeners are metro stations, but there's 1.7 million of those that are listening to community radio in regional areas. And I think it's 727,000 listeners that only listen to community radio, that don't listen to ABC, SBS or commercial radio. That's a very large number of listeners that are only getting their information through us. Just talk briefly about policy advocacy and government relations. John asked me to. One of our key roles is working with government to talk about the importance of community radio to ensure that we have funding levels that help support sustainable community radio, and government's never going to fully fund community radio. Talk a little bit about connecting audiences. If you look back to our strategy, we sort of frame the connecting audience as part of that strategy as helping members build their communities and be available in places that audiences expect. I'll talk a little bit about DAB and then talk a little bit about our online services. Firstly, DAB is launching shortly on community radio on the Gold Coast. I was up there last week talking to the 3 stations that will be on, and they're all very, very excited. We have about nearly 50 stations on websites that CBAA is helping them put together. And Claire's here today. Just give a wave, Claire. Claire's here today at the back, and if anyone wants to have a chat about a station website, Bay FM's an example of one. Claire can give you a whole lot of other examples of websites that we're putting together that have, that we've used the knowledge of the sector to make sure all of the available elements that most stations would need.
Alexa, ask Community Radio Plus to play 2SER.
Playing 2SER.
So many of you have probably seen those smart speakers before, but what this is doing is using our metadata. It's providing very detailed stats back to the station on what can be done. And I think most importantly, I don't know if many of you have heard James Cridland speak, or I've used this example too, is 4ZZZ in Brisbane. On most smart speakers you have to say 4ZZZ because smart speakers are American apparently. We will be launching in the next few weeks the CarPlay version of the app. So this is some screenshots. I couldn't get a video. These are some screenshots. They only started work on this early in the week. These are some screenshots. Please download it. Please promote it with your stations. The app is it's for you. It's for your station. So please make sure your announcers are talking about it all the time and promoting it and listening to a satellite channel. Actually, we have 7 or 8 of them. CRN is distributed through 2 vast satellite channels. We also have a couple of stations. So Hope Media, I think it's Inspire, not only is it Inspire that goes through. No, it's Hope goes through vast. Thanks, Bennett.
It's pretty exciting for me to be here. I started at the CBF when just about when COVID came along, and so this is the first time I've been able to visit Sydney. It's a long time, isn't it? Long time. And I'm very pleased to be here, so thank you for inviting me along. And can you hear me? Sorry, I better use the microphone. Good idea. So as the introduction, I support the New South Wales and ACT stations. I also support the community television independent content makers, usually across Australia, but we're very lucky in Victoria. We have a TV station, Channel 31, and there's one in Adelaide. So a lot of the content is Melbourne-based. No surprise about that. Our team at the CBF is made up of 11 people. We have an executive team, an administration team, and a grant support team. And we provide, in the grant support team, support for stations and for applicants, and we also administer the grant programs. We distribute over 20 million in funding every year. The funding is provided by the federal government through the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Communications and the Arts. We do support all areas of media, including First Nations Australians, ethnic, regional and remote, and radio reading, the RPH sector. The grant process works, so it's really clear to everybody when they're applying for a grant what will happen. So we have a review to start with of the current programs, and we do some work with the sector as well. We then run 2 rounds a year, And the first round is the biggest round, and the majority of the funding gets allocated there. And the first round opens in January, it runs through to March, with applicants being notified of grant outcomes in June. Work hard to make the application process very simple, and we spend a lot of time in that space. We review the programs annually to ensure the objectives are aligned with our strategic plan and the current environment. We use feedback from the grant applicant's feedback survey and the assessor feedback survey to make tweaks. And we really encourage everybody who actually puts an application in to complete the surveys, because we need that feedback from you. We do provide a lot of resources in addition to us as a resource to assist you in your grant application process. So we have frequently asked questions, video tutorials, and webinars. There's a beautiful picture of the assessors. It's pretty full on, isn't it? So what do those assessors do? The assessors, they're volunteers from the sector. They're from stations all over Australia, and they assess grants twice a year following the rounds. They assess online over a 3-week period at their own pace in Smarty Grants, which is our online grant management system. They're virtual volunteers who receive online induction and training, and they never meet face to face. To all the techies in the room, but in particular those who are developing their tech skills or keen to learn, we've recently identified a need for more grant assessors with tech skills, particularly women or people who identify as gender diverse. That's not because we don't value the excellent male techie assessors who are already on the team. It's just because we aim for a gender balance across the panel of up to 8 assessors who consider every grant. And we're struggling to meet that at the moment. As you can see, we all have specific cohorts in different parts of Australia.
I will. Beautiful brekkie, beautiful view out there. Time for some bickies, tea, coffee, why not?
I'm from Ram FM in Goulburn, and what else can I say? I'm the technical officer, treasurer, and I don't know what else.
Thank you. We got Shane here. Shane, you're from Foster.
Yeah, my name's Shane from Great Lakes FM in Foster, and I'm the technical coordinator, also the chairman of the management committee.
Oh, what do you think about Technorama?
You know, Technorama's great. This is sort of, I've been coming for a fair few years. Yeah, it's good that it's back up and running again.
That's right, face to face.
Yes.
Nev, you're from Canberra.
Yes, a fellow Canberran. Yes, I'm here on behalf of Radio 1RPH and 2XX FM. So I've got 2 hats on today. Great to get back to Technorama. Really appreciate the effort that goes into these seminars, and after a couple of years of hiatus, albeit face to face, it's great to be back face to face. So yeah, so thanks.
Do you normally attend Technorama?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I've been coming to these for the last 5 or 6 years. So been here to Melbourne, over to Sydney again, Campbelltown, and it's great to be back here. So, and good to see a fellow Canberran.
Absolutely, from 1CMS. Thank you.
I'm Peter Worthington. I'm from 2RPH, which is part of the radio reading service. It's an Australia-wide network. This is probably my 3rd Technorama. I don't come every year, but it's always good value when I do. VM.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have got Lisa on 1CMS.
Yeah,
How are you liking Technorama?
Yeah, of course. Mate Claire this evening.
Claire, you want to say something?
Hi, I'm Claire from the CBAA. I'm really loving Technorama so far. It's my first one, and we've seen presentations from John Bissett, the CEO of the CBAA, and also Liz Landry from the CBF. And it's just amazing, and I'm so excited to learn more about tech.
And see you in Cairns for the conference.
I'm not going.
Oh, you're not going?
Are you going?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
We are the nominee, finalist.
Oh, yes, I know. So happy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
from
Oh,
the Radio
congratulations.
Manpasand.
I'm so happy for you.
We are off for 2 awards.
C-sharp, you have to be like...
Say something.
Hi Manish, how great is this here today? Anna and John and the team here have done a really good job. So proud to be part of Technorama meeting here today.
And you are?
Malama from WOW FM out in Western Sydney, close to where the new Western Sydney airport's being built.
Wow, FM. Good on you. Thanks. Nice meeting you. So I got 2 young gentlemen here.
Hello, how you doing? Lachlan from 2SER, and still having community radio in the technical space, OBs, engineering, MCRs, things like that, and keen to learn a bit more about team management and the business side of things. So it should be good for us.
Lovely. Enjoying it.
Lockie and I know each other from uni, so that's why we didn't just meet here and hit it off automatically. No, we already have a rapport. So I'm Marty. I work at 2RPH in Glebe. It's a reading service, and I'm really interested to learn more about other stations because, as was said, you can get in a little bit of a bubble. So you can get in a bit of a bubble with your own type of station and what you do. I went into community radio via 2RPH, so you sort of just think that's what every place is like. No, every place is different, and that's part of why the sector is so interesting as well. I'm keen to learn some of the known unknowns and be a more confident operator in radio.
Wonderful. Nice meeting you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Jana Gibson. I am coming along to Technorama today. I work for the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia, and I'm new to the sector, so I'm really hoping I can learn a lot of things and understand much more about how technology is going to impact the sector into the future.
Hello everyone. Could you please
see you at the conference, CBAA at
Sounds good. See you at the conference.
And Margaret is here.
Into the next session. Thank you very much.
Hi Manish, Margaret Cassidy here. I'm on the board of the Community Broadcasting Foundation.
Oh, you.
So we are the organisation that oversees the funding that comes from government and other sources. And we would really encourage any technical people out there or anyone interested in community broadcasting involved in their local station to become an assessor and to learn more about the process.
I'll apply soon.
Great, fantastic.
Why not? Thank you.
Tech sessions are about what happens in the studio, what happens in the middle, what happens at the end. And we're trying to give you a bit of philosophy up front. So the philosophy of the studio piece, I'll sort of talk about everything, but not so much about what happens at the transmitters. Stephen will be talking about that later. And IT is a really interesting one because IT really does glue everything together. There is no such thing anymore as a radio station that doesn't have some sort of IT context. And Mick Kerr will be talking about that after lunch. But the broadcast chain really hasn't changed a lot. Every time I do a diagram of what a broadcast chain looks like, it's the same diagram. Basic studio architecture, what's in the studio, what comes after the studio, which is, it's the stuff's in the rack, or it's in a room, or it doesn't exist, or it's all virtualized inside a blade, but that's what happens in the middle. Then getting to the transmitter, monitoring yourself and listening. A major challenge. Most stations I go into these days have very little monitoring and very little ability to go and check the chain all along, and it is such an important thing to know how well your system is performing. All right, let's have a look at the basic architecture of a station. And here is one of the John block diagrams. Now, there is a course that we put together. Technorama designed that CMTO is facilitating delivery, and that's the tech for the non-technical. Part of that, I talk about doing a block diagram. This is a block diagram that, although it's hand-drawn, that took me probably 5 minutes to do. I've done it in Visio, and it's taken me an hour and a half. And the Visio diagram is no better. It just looks more crisp. It doesn't tell you any more. So my charts are full of these hand-drawn block diagrams. But this is a style of diagram that anybody who does broadcast engineering for a living could digest very, very quickly. So hence I recommend this style. And if you really want to talk about whether or not that's appropriate, come and find me during the break and I'll show you one of the A1 sized charts. Well, I'll attempt to show it to you on a small screen, and you will see how close what the big end of town does for CAD diagrams compared to this. So, okay, here is our station diagram. Turntables, yeah, who's got turntables in their studio? Okay, good. Thank you. And I can tell you that having had discussions with one of the major importers, I talked to at a recent trade show, people from Technical Audio Group, TAG. They handle Audio Technica in Australia, and they still have some good turntables, and they still bring pickup cartridges in, and you can get styli, and you can get both stuff that's robust enough to live in a radio station, and if you happen to have, as we still do, 1,500 records, something where you can play them in hi-fi. Isn't that good? Turntables are a wonderful thing. I was told get the turntables out of the studio at one station I was at. I responded by, there was only one turntable in there, I responded by putting a second turntable in, and about 6 months later a guy came in and started doing a regular Sunday morning, Sunday program using vinyl because he was a vinyl collector. So never underestimate the value of providing a facility that is hardly used if it will lead to a creative. Where do you put 4 turntables and a microphone and a guest, to where do you put an automation system, 12 screens and 2 microphones and a guest? It's actually still the same problem. When you come to design the studio, the mantra is, can everything be where everything else is, please? Now, humans are sort of blessed with a couple of arms, one head, eyes that can go like that. We are generally, of a similar size, but I once designed a television studio where I went and measured people's arms. I found my arm reach is about 770 mils. I tried a director's assistant, and she was about 660. I went to one of my design engineers who was yay tall, and he was 880. And I've learned that somewhere within that range, but probably the shorter end, is about where things need to be. If you're putting stuff that is farther than arm's reach, you're going to make it very difficult for people to use the control room space. All right, so what happens in control? This is often the cupboard, the transmission room, whatever. This will contain the piece that allows you to switch studios. My favourite, and I'm very, very old school. I like analog stuff because it's really hard to break. It doesn't, your Windows can't break an analog console. Yeah, right. Hardly anybody can. And by the way, we'll recognise this. This is a module out of a console. God, so many of these were built. They're still floating around. What do you notice? This is all discrete components. So when this breaks, let's see. No, I'm not going to do that. This is full of chips that can be pulled out of their sockets. And not only is it full of chips that can be pulled out of their sockets, these chips are still available at JCAR. So when they break, this can be replaced. Now, whether or not you've got the skill to do that, that's something that we need to ensure people have. But the thing is, you can work on this. You can't do that with a Wheatstone or an Axia or any of the modern digital consoles. Not to say they're bad, just if you've got a digital console, what is your strategy to ensure that you don't go off the air because one thing has broken? The transmission room normally has studio switching, it has the audio processing. This is where your first line of defense for the transmitter will often go, and sometimes it's the only place where there is a limiter, and you just assume that everything from there to the transmitter is going to be linear, and whatever you send out at the station is going to get to the transmitter without any changes. In the digital world, in the analog world, that was, a lot of stations did it. and never got into trouble. In a digital world, you can almost rely on that. Whatever you send out will arrive at the transmitter in exactly the same form, will get into the transmitter, it's unlikely to change. So you can put all your processing at the studio end, but common sense says, depending on your architecture of your transmitter facility, you might well want to have something at the other end as well. Links. Well, there are any number of ways of getting from the studio to the transmitter. There are still some stations where the studio and the transmitter are in the same place. They will typically be connected by a piece of wire. You don't need to get any more complex than that. 1RPH in Canberra, for instance, their transmitter room is probably about 20 metres from where the master control rack is. They've got a couple of kilowatts of AM in a paddock that's then a couple 100 metres further down the block. So the wiring needs to be good, it needs to be balanced, it needs to be not subject to bad signals getting in, but you can do it with a piece of wire. The vast majority of radio stations, the transmitter is not where the studio block is these days. And so we've had to go away from landlines because part of Telstra's, we're not going to have bits of copper in the ground anymore. Landlines just sort of went away. Just some really good receivers. If you can get a Yamaha CT7000 analog, gorgeous, gorgeous device. Cost like $2,000 when it first came out in 1975. It is still one of the best FM receivers you can get. But there are lots of really good standalone FM receivers. Again, Yamaha did some really good ones. If you're an FM station, you want the best FM receiver you can, but you can get those on eBay. Come and talk to me later, because I can't remember the one that I've got at home, but they're really good. If you want to spend a lot of money and get a really good off-air receiver, an Inovonics monitor, that'll be a couple of $1,000. You could try for that on a CBF grant. It will certainly tell you how your station is performing. No question. You will know when you put one of these things, your station is working or it is not, and you will know why. So it's a good device to have, but it's also a device you can borrow. If you want to go and do the test and measurement thing, you could find one to borrow. You don't necessarily have to have one in the station, but a good receiver. Phones and phone patch. This is something that just confused the crap out of everybody. When we went to an NBN methodology, we went away from the two-wire phone lines that came into everybody's house and into everybody's station. A lot of stations actually panicked. They said, the only way I can do this now is with an IP phone. I have to throw everything away. A lot of stations have thrown away perfectly good key phone systems like the Commanders and replaced them with digital systems, possibly vended out, so it's possibly a provided service or cloud-based, whatever, and sort of no longer have control of their destiny. Now, that's fine. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but interfacing a digital phone to a console is way more difficult than interfacing an analog phone line to a console. When you put all this technology together, one of the last things to happen is documentation. By the way, it's not community radio, it's the big end of town as well. I did a major consulting piece as part of a team looking at one of the largest broadcasters in this country. That wasn't the ABC, I just want to make that clear. It wasn't the ABC, but we were asked to come in and go, tell us what's good and bad about the organisation, and the first thing we spotted was documentation. And where there was documentation, a lot of it was wrong, out of date, but wrong, and couldn't have been used in an emergency to fix anything. Well, it wouldn't be much of a presentation on studio technology if I didn't say, well, here's what we see coming down the track. And the first thing I've discovered is this is not the version of the presentation that I thought I had brought up, which is very sad because there was all kinds of animations. So I'm just going to point at stuff. Here, hello. Okay. First trend that I've noticed, just one, this might explain why there's no Raspberry Pi picture in there, because I'm using the wrong version of it.
Can you just talk amongst yourselves for a second? First trend that I notice is a focus on automation as the centerpiece of the studio. More and more stations that I go into have no CD players, no peripherals at all. There is a microphone and an automation system, and that's it. It's basically, hello, you turn on the microphone, you hit the button, you turn on the microphone, you hit the button. It's good and bad. There's nothing wrong with automation systems. I would really not like to be in a station where there was never a CD player anywhere I could reach. That's just me, because I'm scared shitless of delivering dead air. But it's certainly a trend. What that means is there are fewer devices in the studio, and that means fewer opportunities to recover if something goes wrong. That also means studios tend to get, oh, that's pretty fatal, and that's not because they've worn out, that's because you've done something stupid. But microphones, you know, there's still, if you've got a Neumann microphone, a valve, you've got a U47 from 60 years ago, it's worth tens of thousands of dollars. It's not worn out, it's a priceless artifact.
They're noisy though. If they're 30 years old, they're noisy.
And what part do you replace?
The capsule, which costs $600.
They still don't wear out. They're $600 out of a $15,000 microphone. Mixers, but certainly faders and switches might eventually need attention. Signal processors don't wear out, although 2AAA, you got your processor back now? Yeah, okay. The caps blew up. So after all the capacitors have been replaced, bang, it's back to work. Equipment manuals should be where somebody can get to them. It might be physical manuals sitting on a shelf somewhere, or it could be copies of. And we're having a great deal of success as somebody says, oh, I can't find a manual for Technorama's been really successful at finding copies of those manuals because somebody will have them. So putting up a request on Q&A generally gets a response for a soft copy, and we keep those manuals. So we're building up a library of stuff that with the new membership system, we will make available instantaneously to members as a member benefit. Most radio stations still work the way they always have. It's the tools have changed, but you're still doing a lot of the same things that you did, except better and more easily, maybe. Transmitters are getting better, but the building blocks we use are still the same. Stephen will be talking about that later. There's really no change in cables and connectors and antennas and power at all. It's same stuff that I was dealing with a long time ago. So your job as the technologists is to support your customers, work out who your customers are, then provide them the best support that you can, provide the best advice that you can, and manage the risk in the best way that you can. There we go. I'm not going to, I am going to go and try and find what I did with my memory key and then find out what happened to the rest of my presentation, because that's really sad. The photos that are there are just gorgeous.
Oh, I haven't lost mine.
No, I haven't lost yours.
It's got nice photos too.
Thank you, Stephen. Do you want to introduce Hannah while I turn off my microphone and get her thing to work?
Yes, that's great. This is Hannah Murray. Where are we? She's great at whipping groups into line. She's been an asset to the Technorama board by keeping us all. This is the word. By keeping us all in line. But she's got great experience with building and being a team. So, which is, it's hard enough when they're paid staff, keeping them in line. I'm reading about my paid staff over here. So a little, volunteers. They're volunteering their time, and you want to keep it interesting and work together. But anyway, over to Hannah.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi everyone, how are you doing? So yes, my name is Hannah Murray, and I am the Broadcast Operations, Communication and Team Manager at the Sports Entertainment Network. Prior to that though, I grew up right through community radio, so I've been involved with CBAA, CMTO of course, Eastside Radio, 2RDJ, CBF Grant Assessing very briefly, sorry, and a few other stations to name a few. And I guess this is a really hot button topic. The reason being, everyone is asking, How can we attract new talent? How can we attract people that are already in our station to become more involved in the technical elements of the station? So the advice I'm giving you today is from a commercial radio perspective, but the lessons I learned were all through community radio. And I'm hoping that they can be valuable for you, even if you're from a little mum and dad community station in Canberra, right through to bigger stations. So yes, big topic, but I'm hoping you'll find some value in it nonetheless. What you should be looking for when you're recruiting for the team and investing in the team. The second thing is creating habits that stick. So you have the people, how do you make them stay? How do you reinvest into the team? And then the third thing is about combating the leaky pipeline. How do we lose the people that we have in our organisation, and how can we fix things? First, the skills, so specific skills you need your people to have within a technical team. Motivation, which is understanding what motivators are being used throughout your team and how you can use them to your advantage. And then collaboration. How do you get different types of people from different types of experience and different walks of life to work together to make a big, valuable contribution to your skills? Skills are probably the easiest place. Skills are specific learned abilities that you need to perform a given job well. They can be described in two categories, hard skills and soft skills. Yes, there is a nice little spanner. Please appreciate my graphic design. Graphic design is my passion. So I've listed some of the hard skills that we need at Sports Entertainment Network, but surely it's not an exhaustive list, but it encapsulates stuff that things you would do at your community station as well. Now, when you think tech, you're probably not thinking soft skill, and that's understandable, but I'd encourage you to start recruiting people that have these sorts of skills: mentorship, active listening, verbal and written communication, friendliness, diplomacy. The problem that we have at the moment with every part of the sector, this is commercial, public, community, and little narrowcasters, is that we have one person that is the hub of knowledge. One person that knows everything about your station. We need to move away from the mentality that one person needs to know everything. And also, creating a tech team that lasts is about variety in your skill set. You may have someone that is brilliant and knows transmission back and front. They might not be the best person to communicate that information to your board. You need to leverage the strengths of someone with really good soft skills to make sure that you're communicating your need properly, to make sure that you're documenting properly. Technical people, I love you, you're great, you're not the best at documentation, I have to say, I'm so sorry. I'm going to do a bit of talking about motivation. It's a really important topic. Had to cut this down quite a lot because we've got 30 minutes. But if you want to do further reading on this, I really recommend looking at psychological studies, 5-factor model, and self-determination theory. But to keep it really, really simple, we've got types of motivation and the do's and the don'ts. And this is when someone is incentivized by an external reward. Why this is important, I've also got example scenarios. So imagine that you've got a technical team of volunteers that are undertaking and successfully completed a significant technical project for the station. The motivation for that can be extrinsic, meaning that the motivation may be seeing this wonderful big project to completion, seeing the visible change that it makes at your station. A way that you could motivate further to promote this behaviour and to make people feel valued and to continue to get work like that to happen at your station is to put them up for nominations. If you have volunteer meetings like once a year, AGMs, have an awards component at your station. Award good behaviour. Make sure that you're actually visibly acknowledging the work being done. Again, internal motivation comes from within. And the very first and easiest one is intrinsic motivation. The internal desire to succeed or passion for an interest or hobby. A lot of you are here because of intrinsic motivation. You are happy to be here. Some of you are here because of identified motivation. You know you need the skills because you want to be better at your station. Let's talk an example. A volunteer has a burning desire to learn everything there is to know about radio technology. So, gosh, can't relate. So they get involved in a radio station. They join the tech team or shadow the lead technologist. They tinker with tech in their own time, and they seek out learning material and opportunities. Intrinsic motivation is one of the basic reasons that people come to a station. They want to be part of a station. They want to be involved. They want to be part of the community. They want to make a difference.
That's me. That's
Yes,
me. Yeah.
That's you. Recruit for the areas you need in your team. So we've talked about skills, we've talked about motivation. Now we need to look at who have we got once we've done all that analysis within our team or within our volunteer base. Who are we missing? What do we need? So you'll see this lovely Venn diagram over here. Getting someone that has a technologist perspective, they're going to know quite a lot about a lot of things. But they may not be the strongest when it comes to documenting the work or maybe the integration with IT. Getting someone that's got operations experience overlaps into the kind of person that likes to make manuals, the type of person that likes to do asset registers, building that kind of skill set into what you're doing. An operations person can intersect with several different types of people. If you've got administrative, you can have databases, you can get right involved into a website as well. Having IT would naturally kind of sit into the technologist skill set. You can look at your networking. You can look at website development. When we're talking about creating habits, we're talking about repetition, 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 repetition. Please, 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 repeat stuff. But let's talk about consistency first. At the very start of the process of getting new volunteers into your station, you should be making sure that all of your station volunteers have the same technical plinth to stand on. Build in standard technical training to your volunteers. They don't need to know it all, but they should definitely know at least a little bit about audio editing, a little bit about how your desk works, if it's an analog or a digital console, and maybe like a very brief speed run on transmission process. Having consistency in how you run your team and run your sessions is going to win you so many more people. Create opportunities for visible change. We talked about external motivation before. Use that to leverage your team's success. Use it so that your volunteers can see it, the community can see it, and the wider world can see what you're doing too. Finally, and probably my worst attempt at graphic design ever, combating the leaky pipeline. What pain points might push people out of your volunteer organisation, specifically your technical team? So the idea of a leaky pipeline is that you have water going in this case volunteers, and at every part of the pipe there's a crack. And this crack represents a place where people can drip out or leave. As you go through the pipeline, things happen that drop your team out, and the end result is a little technical team. So, because then you have something to start with. If people are time poor, that's understandable. It's hard to get people to invest in something, but build on their core need. What do they need from learning technical skills? How do you leverage that need and then get people hooked in without even realizing it's tech? And then probably the saddest one, which is the skilled team members. Outside life circumstances, you're not going to change that. I have no band-aid for that one. Maybe you can find one. I would love to have more band-aids to put on this, by the way. Low appreciation and reward. There are people that have been serving your sector, your station, for years and years and years, decades sometimes. And because they have done it for so long, people don't even think to thank them. People don't even think to say, hey, you have been so great, let's invest in you, let's reinvest energy into you. Don't let great people walk out of your team because they feel like they're just being the head against. So hopefully with some of these band-aids, we'll have a much happier, fuller glass/tech team.
Yeah.
Cool. This is the last slide. Who can help you? Hello, Technorama. You're at this conference, but Technorama can help you. If you have identified skills that don't exist in your station and you don't know who to ask us. We're here to help. Flick us an email at info@technorama.org.au and one of our wonderful volunteers will help you to find skills within the community. If you feel a little bit self-conscious about asking us directly, understandable. We do have other ways you can engage with us. Community Radio Tech Q&A is like the brains trust of all of the technologists in the community media sector, including also people that are in commercial. So Community Radio Tech Q&A, it's a Facebook group. There is also, I think, like a little built-in platform on our website that lets you go to that group. And then coming soon is an information repository made by Technorama. We understand that, like Liz was saying, you might not have the time, energy, love, or money to put into making templates for your station to make sure that you're giving the right information in the right way as succinctly as possible. We want to help you with that. We're trying to make a bank of templates that will help your station, an asset register, a starting list of technical things that you should start your volunteers on. Keep an eye on that. If you become a member, you'll have access to our technical information repository soon when it comes up. The other people that can help you is obviously my loves, the Community Media Training Organisation, cmto.org.au. Michaela Ford is going to be speaking to you about that. But they have so many things available, online learning courses, pathways courses, accredited courses. They are the only registered training organisation within the community media sector for the community media sector. If you think Technorama can't help you or you want something a bit more formalised training-wise, CMTO is the one-stop shop for that training. I'll let Michaela do more of the spruik for that, but that's it. Thank you very much for listening.
You got a nice lunch here.
Sorry, I was just going to grab a plate.
That's why I did the wrong way, but
Beautiful.
well, I'm going to this store.
Another thing to think of is, as a tech, are you actually running tech for the business, or are you running it for your enjoyment and your fun? I mean, the two can come together, but ultimately, if the station isn't working, or if what you're doing isn't benefiting the station, then you really have to question what you're doing. Another thing is we do have constraints. We do have budgets. We've got, we do really have budgets, but and you're not going to be able to get everything you need. But when you're looking for free stuff, you do have to ask yourself, is it really free? So yes, you can go and download a piece of software, you can install it, but what are the other implications of doing, like installing that software? The question that I was asked once upon a time was it free as in beer, or free as in kittens? You know, if you're given a free beer, that's great. You know, no obligations, no strings attached. But if you get a kitten, it's a different story. And when I say read the product disclosure statement before deciding if this is right for you, some of the stuff that I'll be talking about is generic. You've got your own circumstances. What you're doing is going to be very individual to your station, even though we do share a lot of the same problems. So take what I say with a grain of salt and have a good think about how it applies to what you're doing as an organisation. And to hark back to what John's been saying is, we do need to manage and accept risk as a whole organisation. So it's not just you, but you do have to think about the things that you're doing in terms of the risk to the organisation as a result of what you're doing. And as a final point, the question is, well, as it was presented to me, is anybody dead? There is a whole backstory to that. You can ask me afterwards. But in terms of like that question is like, with what you're doing, maintain a healthy sense of perspective. You know, it's a radio station, you're not running a hospital, you're not running, you know, you're not doing surgery on someone. So for your mental health, just maintain a healthy sense of perspective. The things that we're talking about in terms of IT, the broad brush, or the broad areas, your internet access, where you need internet, networking, in terms of how you get your data and your devices connected in your organisation, the computers and how you're configuring them, storage, like where you're putting your stuff and how you're treating that, the systems that you're putting in place for your organisation to allow the people to collaborate and communicate with each other. Once you put a system in, how are you monitoring it? You're only one person, so how do you actually keep track of all of the things that you're putting in? The tools that you're using day to day to do your job in terms of like documentation, asset management, and project management. Some broad brush stuff on cybersecurity and some high overview things on what you can do to protect your organisation, and talk about some stuff in terms of business continuity and disaster recovery. So starting with the internet, well, I'll sort of throw in a quote that I've had stuck up on my wall for ages, and I've got a few of them, but this one is, the problem is we don't understand the problem. So with everything that you're doing, you really have to sort of stop and try and sort of take a step back and understand, like, what are you trying to do? What are the implications of what you're doing? And how will this thing change that? So in terms of your internet, what are you actually using it for? Are you using it purely for letting people browse the internet? Are you running like your email over it, collaboration? Have you actually changed your phones? Like, are your phones running over your NBN connection or your internet connection? Are you using it for media consumption, for syndicated content, and like for your news and your traffic reports and things like that? And are you streaming? Is your stream going out over your internet connection? Are you using it for an STL link, like a backup to your transmitter? So all of those things, and probably more, have to be considered when you're thinking about how you're connected to the network. Giving people access to the things they need to access, in terms of personal devices, corporate devices. I mean, to be honest, my background is from IT. I've only recently come into radio, so a lot of the things that I think about is trusted and untrusted networks, trusted and untrusted devices. With setting up your network and segmenting it, so breaking it into different sections, consider putting your automation machines on a separate network that are so they're protected from anything else that's on the rest of your network. So if people are bringing their laptops in, people are bringing their phones in, you don't know what's on those phones, you don't know what's on the laptop. And if they're on the same segment as your automation machines, then you could find yourself in a world of hurt. In Brisbane, we actually have our automation machines on a totally separate network. They can't get to the internet, they can't get up. The only thing they can get to is a file share for getting content into the network. And so we choose to protect our automation system by doing that. Your network can extend beyond the four walls of your building. So if you do have, you've got your transmitter site, you've got your building, you can consider putting in a point-to-point network. So Ubiquiti makes some nice cheap point-to-point equipment. Can be a couple of $100 an end, and that's if you've got line of sight to your transmitter. Then throwing a couple of those up can actually get your network access up to there and give you some options for moving data across there as an offsite backup. And again, a different path for getting content up to your transmitter. And the other thing to think about is, do people need access to your network from outside the building? So if people are at home with this new way of, well, not new, but the shift to remote working, do people need to be able to get into your service, to get into your equipment? Are they uploading content into your network? Do they need a VPN access? Do they need remote desktop to get to specific applications? And the other application for the VPN is if you do have a separate internet connection at your transmitter, putting in a point-to-point VPN, virtual private network, again, gives you, essentially brings your transmitter site onto your local network and gives you the ability to access everything that's up there, depending on what you've got up there. So let's talk about computers. So what you run on your network, again, your mileage may vary and it's largely going to depend on your circumstances. So again, you're going to have to understand what your users are doing, what the applications are that you're running. And again, some of it comes down to user preference. If you give them a Linux computer, because you know, it's free, are people going to know how to use it? Are they going to be willing to make the change to use it? If they're used to using Macs, are they going to want to use Windows? Do they have the option? Sometimes they're just going to have to get over it. But you know, that's all things you've got to consider. There's a particular announcer that we work with up in Brisbane, and he's very resistant to change. And right now he uses his iPad. We've given him a laptop, we've given him everything he needs, and still uses the iPad. So you know, it's, again, you have to consider who you're working with. When you're managing your computers, how do you work with them? How do you make sure that you can quickly get a computer going? If it fails, how do you rebuild it and make sure that it's back to the same state and working in the same way that it was working before it failed? If you've got the infrastructure, then there's a bunch of different tools available to you. If you're using Microsoft 365, then you do have Intune and Autopilot for automatically installing apps and bringing things back to a particular configuration. Small not-for-profits, and that will get you going and get you access to remote computers when you need it. Another one that's good for software installs and remote management is a thing called Pdq Deploy. You can use it in free mode, upload your own apps, customize them, do all that sort of stuff, and that will help you manage your computer when it's not on site. You can push it out to all the computers that are registered against your system, and it doesn't matter where they are. You can, you can update them. Updates. I think, well, I'm seeing a few wry smiles. You've got to have your computers updated. In this day and age, we can't just leave computers not updated. Well, asterisk. If you do, you've got to accept the risk. And you have to think about how you're going to mitigate the risk. So, for all of the way I manage all of my laptops is Windows default settings for all my users. And it prompts them, they have to reboot, they get grumpy, but they're updated. And they're all just updated on the Windows, the Windows release cycle. With the servers, if you can, wait for Patch Tuesday. For your non-critical stuff, first Tuesday of every month, Microsoft releases all their updates, all their security updates. So if you can, wait until Patch Tuesday and then do a bit of a sweep through your network. If it's critical, wait a week. So wait for Patch Tuesday, wait a week, and then do your critical stuff. But it's pretty key to keep your stuff up to date. And that also involves drivers. Because the drivers, in terms of vulnerabilities and things that people can take advantage of, drivers are another part for people to get into your network and to compromise your stuff. Use the vendor tools for that. So I know Dell has this great little bit of kit called Command Update. HP have got something similar. Lenovo will have something. Everybody will have this, like a utility you can put on your computers that sits there in the background, regularly checks for driver updates, downloads them, installs them, and keeps your computers up to date. Again, with your automation network though, you have to have a think about whether or not you can keep those computers up to date. Right now, for us, the advice from Zeta, we're using, advice from RCS, we're using Zeta, is don't run Windows updates on your computers. So if that's the case, and your vendor is saying don't do that, how are you going to make sure your computer's protected? And again, I just mentioned it, we have our network segmented, so we've got basically an automation network that is segregated from the rest of the network. Nothing is allowed in there, and those computers are only allowed out to like one network drive share. They're not allowed out to the internet, so people can't browse on them. So that's our strategy for mitigating the risk of not being able to update those computers. Basically, they're the go-to place for not-for-profits, and they have pretty much everything IT that you need. So if you need computers, they have refurbished computers, they have new computers that are discounted. They'll have switches, they'll have routers, software licensing. So again, talking about TeamViewer, you can get a single discounted license of TeamViewer that's quite affordable for a single station. From there for not very much at all, like your Adobe licensing you can get through there. Microsoft 365 donated licensing, all through connecting up, and that's a great option to get from there. There's a bunch of other different sites. You can always go retail if you can't find it anywhere else. Direct from the vendors, bunch of different places. But I think probably the biggest takeaway is always tell them you're not for profit, and always ask for better, for better pricing, because you never know if you don't ask. And chances are, like most of the time, a lot of organisations they'll have some sort of not-for-profit deal that they'll knock a bit off the price, or they'll have a special price, 30%, 15%, whatever off the price for not-for-profit organisations. So always ask.
Broadcasters who need a translation, or people with vision impairment, or specific needs that they need to fulfill, will also offer support so everyone can access the training. Now, a little bit of what we have on offer. So there's a few slides here. So I did mention before we have our self-paced courses. These are all delivered online. We have our Introduction to Media Law, our Introduction to Workplace Health and Safety, which are our 2 standard courses, and then we have our Introduction to Creating Content Remotely. So that's creating your show from home. And we also have a brand new one, our Introduction to Digital Content Creation, and that's all about social media. So all of these courses here are completely self-paced, meaning that you can log on and start them and log off at any time and come back where you left off. They take roughly about 4 hours to complete, and they are really, really great to use as either refresher courses or induction courses for when you are getting new volunteers at the station. We also offer a discount, so each of these courses cost $11 to partake, but we do offer discounts to community broadcasters, particularly if you have bulk enrolments, so a bulk group of volunteers who want to complete the courses. Now, our accredited courses. So of course I don't look after our accredited courses. I have a wonderful colleague who couldn't be here today, Jason Vallely, who looks after, who looks after our accredited courses. And here they are on offer. So we have our Certificate 2 in Creative Industries, our Certificate 3 in Screen and Media, split into skill sets. So not only at the Scene to Go can you complete a full Certificate 3 in Screen and Media, but we also have specific skill sets that you can focus on. So those are a broadcasting skill set, we have a producer skill set, and a social media skill set as well. And those skill sets make up the Certificate 3. So if you were looking for your station to complete a Certificate 3, but you didn't want to commit to the full course right away, as it does take about a year, you could look at doing some skill sets and do them each year to draw out the process. The Certificate 4 in Screen and Media, So that one is the step up from our Certificate 3, and as John has mentioned very excitedly, we are launching a skill set for the Certificate for In-Screen and Media for Broadcast Technology. So we've been working on that for a long time, which Stephen mentioned. So we're hoping to launch it next year, which is really, really exciting. And another one we have in the works as well is our journalism skills, the skill set for the Cert 4. Our brand new skill set is our community broadcasting marketing skill set. So that is being undertaken now by a pilot of students and should wrap up in about November. So this marketing skill set is designed for people working either paid or voluntarily in leadership or marketing roles in community broadcasting. So it is suitable for the community media staff and volunteers who are active members of your station in a leadership sense. Was at 2RRR at Bunnings, at Bunnings, and yes, you can see everyone working away there at the UB, and they got a certificate of completion at the end of the course. Next one we have is our station playout software course. So this one is 1 day, 6 hours, also delivered on site at the station. This one we have started moving into a bit of a blended delivery as well. So if you're wanting an online component, we can also set you up with a trainer to deliver the course online. So it's tailored to your playout system. Typo, yeah, it's tailored to your playout system. So whatever system you're using at your station, we will find a trainer suitable to go to the station and work with your volunteers and staff to work out how to use the system effectively. And of course, certificate of completion at the end. Next one, which has been mentioned a few times today, is our Station Tech for the non-technical, written by John himself. It's a 1 day course delivered on site at stations and aimed at the station management level. You do get a certificate of completion on end, and it does feature a lot of excellent topics. It goes into depth drawing the block diagrams, which John already mentioned today as well. And here is a really nice photo of a Station Tech for Non-Technical in Alice Springs. And now our Studio Tech Blitz. This is one of my favorite courses. So this is a 2 day course, also delivered on site. This one cannot be delivered online because the premise of this course is having a technologist go to your station, pull apart gear and put it all back together so you work out the inner workings. Certificate of completion on end as all the courses, and I've added an extra slide with some pictures. So this was also at 2RRR. I think this was back in 2018.
A while ago.
Yeah. 19? Yeah. Yeah, so here are some more pictures taking apart the gear in the studio.
Right down to disassembling faders.
Alright, our mentorships. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have been offering some incredible mentorships in leadership, journalism, and as recent as this year, now tech mentoring. So I will tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. New offering at the CMTO as well are our traineeships. So we do offer a Certificate 3 in Screen and Media traineeship and also a Certificate 4 in Screen and Media traineeship. So what this means is we will, in selected states, the trainees that you have at your station, you can apply with us to put them through a traineeship, and they will not only receive training, but a partial subsidy for their wage. So a wage subsidy is included in the traineeship. And here are two of our CMTO trainees, Tanita and Madura. Okay, how it works. So the CMTO has one annual training application round open for 2 weeks a year. So this is your chance to apply for fully subsidised training. So that means the training is completely free, no out-of-pocket expenses, and we will send the trainer to you and reimburse you for anything like catering or printing of your resources. If you apply outside of this training application round, you may be eligible for partial subsidy, so we can cover part of the course and have a fee-for-service arrangement. But it's always best that if you have a training need, come directly to us, and we can definitely see what we can do and what money we can put toward, what funding we can put toward it, all thanks to the CBS.
The cover the couple of blocks of the street, a bit of a pirate radio. Back then, I think we called it 2GJ, which it was general junk, was I think what my mother classified it as, 2GJ, and our positioning statement was, because at the time I think 2CH was good music or something, so we were better music than good music radio. So anyway, that was my pirate radio at home and around the street. And but then sort of when I was about 15, I got involved in my local community station on the northern beaches of here in Sydney, and did everything, which was good on air. And so I got involved in the tech side and learnt a lot about STLs and transmitters there. So that was my early experience in FM radio, and even though I'm at a big station, reasonably big station here in Sydney, and I still assist a lot of little stations, not just the ones that I mentioned before, but a lot of the smaller stations up and down the coast. And so yeah, that's where my sort of passion for Technorama has come from, in helping stations and any of you guys asking questions, and Shane, I've known Shane for a long time, and he'll ring me up from time to time, and a lot of stations ring up just saying, what do you think about this sort of thing? So so I do have a concept of what a small station has to work on a small, smell of an oily rag. So there's some things that can, from the big stations, translate to the little stations. But of course, with the bigger stations, there's more at stake. Basic sort of architecture, technology, good working technology. Wow, the mouse doesn't work up there, John.
Oh, no, it won't. It's transparent.
No, just the click won't work. So as we've gone through the basic architecture with what John has talked about, and Mick as well in IT, so you've got your various program sources and and delegation switching, and then your audio processor, and and so in the transmission section, which is mostly what I'm going to be talking about, is you've got your studio to transmit a link receiver if you're using 800 megahertz link or a 5.8 gig link over digital link. So that you've got your receiver, you've got, because your transmission site can be as simple as being a link receiver, a transmitter, of course antennas, and preferably some sort of monitoring, but that's what a basic site can be. So yeah, as we've talked about in the broadcast chain, you've got your studio and delegation, and of course we're talking mainly here of FM, and AM is a little bit different, but I really haven't had much AM experience in all my years. So there's main things that you can be talking about with your transmission site. As I said before, the important things is your link receiver,
If you don't do your processing at the studios, you're then needing to do that at the transmitter site. And then if you're FM, you generally want to be in stereo, so you also need a stereo generator, which these days a stereo generator is generally in the processor. And you know, transmitters can be made up of anything from 30 watts to, well, even 10 watts, but you know, you've got small transmitters up to big transmitters. And the way that you can achieve that is generally by having you know, an exciter which gives you 30 watts, and you generally need 30 watts to then drive a power amplifier to then step it up to anywhere from 200 to...
But we also spent, you know, we spent 2 days drinking a lot of red wine. It was good value, and we just had to wait until we could go down to JCar and buy a $5 fan to repair the power supply, which happened on the day after Boxing Day. Quite sort of convenient. These things will happen. They'll happen at a time which is, you know, the least likely time. And I thought that we were adequately protected, but our backup power amp didn't work either. So we spent 2 days just running on the exciter barefoot. I think it was a 50 watt exciter. I just cranked flat chat, and that's what we're using. And really hardly anybody noticed. If anybody did notice, they certainly weren't calling up saying you're off the air. So there you go. All right, well, what just happened? We've just had TR22. Thank you very much for some of the comments that you've given to me in breaks. I'm incredibly grateful for the fact that pretty much every presentation we ran to time. So plus or minus eating a little bit into the breaks, this has sort of worked out okay from an organiser point of view. I'd really like to thank everybody who participated in this. It was very much a big team effort. To our three partners, so John and Liz and Mick, who presented on their special topics, and I hope that gave you sort of some better feel for what sector organisations are doing. And then to the Technorama team, which is Hannah, Mick and Stephen, for the additional technology and human factors input, human resources input. And of course this is all supported by the Technorama board, and then underlying the organisations that John, Liz and Mick come from, who all supported this, which has been really, really good. All of these presentations are, you know, sort of on a PC. We're highly unlikely to be handing them out before we've completed the run, so there's probably about another 3 weeks before we work out what we're going to do with the presentations and then what we can make available. But I would hope that we can work out how to make those charts available, and you can come back and have a look at it. There's a lot of great wisdom in those charts. I thought I should put up another pie chart, so there it is. Thank you. And then because I put up a pie chart, I thought I should put up an eye chart, so there's that. And that could be the end of the gags.
What an e-chart?
A which?
An e-chart.
An e-chart?
That's a PIE.
Oh, no, well that was, yeah, okay, we're not going there. All right, so look, there are some takeaways. I stopped being able to fill this in after we got to lunch because it's my laptop that's sort of running everybody's presentations. But we heard some really interesting things. Buried in what John Bissett was saying is that there is a killer community building app and process that is now in beta test. In fact, CBF still doesn't have its Facebook page back, does it? No. So CBF has lost its Facebook page. I sort of spotted something that Facebook had done to a post by Keith. Keith put up a post and it was commenting on a piece of equipment, and he said, oh, by the way, this is available, blah, 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 blah. I looked at the post, I read it any number of ways. Facebook took it down a week ago without any warning and said, this transgresses our policies on creating danger for people, as essentially it was saying, this might cause hurt to somebody's persona so we've taken it down. And Keith was saying, well, if that product doesn't work, here's another product that's actually really pretty good. And I went through the Facebook process that said, well, if you disagree with our assertion this should come down, tell us. I went, yeah, okay, I'd like to talk to somebody. I immediately got a response. The two choices you get, by the way, are you can raise this with your community, Radio Box, click here, or you can ask us to review it, Radio Box. So you can only pick one of the two. So I picked the, well, how about, you discuss this with me and we'll just take this offline. Immediately automatically came back and said, oh, well, due to COVID, we don't actually have enough people to bother with this, so bugger off. Bang, and that's it. There's no further ability to do anything.
Well, you will deal with Mark Zuckerberg.
We have a lot of people in our community who just don't want to have anything to do with Facebook.
Yeah.
And the CBAA, and we use Facebook for Q&A. It's been a very good experience. It's helped us communicate with a lot of people. A lot of people are comfortable using Facebook and they enjoy telling people what the family's doing, what they had for lunch. And so it was an easy onboarding process, but it's not the best for a number of reasons, not the least of which is a lot of very good discussions just get lost. There is no way of indexing, they're not available publicly. And so we have these great discussions with great wisdom that should go back into the community, and it's not, it's just being lost. So the CBAA has been working with an organisation that builds community support website tools, and it's sort of like a forum environment, but more organisationally focused. And that is starting beta testing right now. So watch this space, and if everything works okay, we will probably take Q&A and we'll migrate it. Not because we want to hide it from people, in fact, because we want to make it more accessible to the people who we think are important. So that's certainly happening. Liz's point, talk to the grants support team, the people who used to be called the GAs, grants administrators. They are just such a fabulous resource. Don't spend time with them. They're a fabulous resource, and they will, if you give them a proposal and say, look, here's what I'm thinking of putting up, can you read this and give me your feedback? They will come back and say, 3 people have tried that in the past, it's never really flown. Or tweak this because that will make it more likely to be approved by the people who are reviewing the grants. The GST are just this great resource waiting to be used, and they're really happy to pick up the phone in business hours. They're really great, really happy to pick up the phone. And if you notice on Liz's chart, they all have individual phone numbers which go somewhere. I know that Shay's desktop number goes to her mobile phone, and she doesn't want anybody to know what her mobile phone is. That's fine, but at least I know I can dial a number and get Shay, which is much better than a lot of organisations where you call sort of some faceless number that will go God knows where. Yes, the more studios change, the more they stay the same. Look, I really did want to show you this, so just give me a second, because I found out what happened. It was my own attempt to adequately back up my own work meant that I put the file I wanted in the wrong place and overwrote the live version with an older non-backup. So unfortunately I didn't lose anything. I was scared to death. This is a new studio at CBC in Montreal. Now I got very lucky probably about 10-15 years ago. I was in Montreal working on the World Science Fiction Convention, and one of my Simply colleagues was the chief engineer for radio at CBC in Montreal, and I got a tour of the place. It was very old school at that stage. They had integrated radio with the newsroom where they had cameras because they also used that for television. But the more studios change, the more they stay the same. They still look like studios. They're still doing the same thing. Turn on the microphone, talk in a Spanish accent, and then turn up the microphone. I thought Hannah's piece about text having motivators, particularly it's not often I hear the word extrinsic used in a sentence, but that was nice. Yeah, looking at the motivators for technologists, of the people around you, really important. And a great takeaway that not everybody in the tech team needs to be a tech, but doing something every week on a social basis is a great way to build up a team, and it doesn't happen instantly, it happens over a period of time. I will say I got very lucky when I came to Sydney, and after having run the technology team at 3PBS in Melbourne as we were building that, and when I say as we were building that, I mean literally we were building it. We designed and built our own transmitter, we designed and built the PA, we designed the exciter, the stereo generator, designed and built the console in the studio, fitted out the studio, like everything from parts. Even designing, nobody would do this now, designing an omnidirectional, horizontally polarized antenna because we thought that was going to be helpful. Turned out it wasn't particularly, but we did it at the time. Everything was horizontally polarized in those days, and we needed to be omnidirectional. That was quite exciting. But when I came to Sydney and I joined 2MBS, one of the things I noticed straight away was that every Saturday there was a group came in, and it wasn't a small group, it was like 5, 10 people, and there was a meeting, and there was coffee, and technologists love coffee and pizza, it turns out. Who knew? Who knew? So running something regularly in your station, and it might just be, you know, like, I'll be there every Saturday, come and join us, and, you know, like for 5 weeks you're there on your own, and then one other person turns up, and then somebody else turns up, and then you go and hit on people and you say, oh, we're doing this project, we need some help. People love being asked to help, and they love being asked to help where the process is a defined amount of time. I just need you for today. I certainly found over the years that saying to people, we've got 10 weeks, by the end of 10 weeks, I'd like the following things to be completed in the studio. Everybody happy with that? Yes, good, right. Here's your bit, you know what you're doing? Yes, good, right. And nothing would happen. But if I said, everybody, on this date, we're coming in and we've got 2 days and we have to do all the following things, the Blitz mentality. And that was huge. So I could get people to come in and do that, but I could get them to come in for the 2 days because we'd spent all this time being social in the lead up. And people then understood what was about to happen. So really, really important. I hope we can get Hannah's charts up as soon as possible, because there's just some fabulous gems in there, and so much about what techs are is about understanding the social ways that techs behave. And you're like, I'm one. So, okay. And then I lost control of my own machine, so I could no longer write anything down. We didn't actually talk about where you go and get gear, but I think I have now rebuilt 3 stations using stuff from eBay. eBay is not as fertile as it used to be, but there is still stuff on eBay that's quite useful. I have more hybrids at home than I know what to do with. I also have a lot of distribution amps at home, analog distribution amps. So if any of you need DAs, come talk to me, because at some point, she who must be obeyed is going to require me to empty out the rest of the house so we can sell it as part of our transitional move to Toowoomba. But I did get pinged by eBay today that said, oh, here's some stuff you might want to be interested in. So I must have been looking at NASA's for some of my research.
1, 2, 3, everybody there. John, you're missing.
I know I'm missing. Okay, so
there you are.
From back here.